Hello there and welcome back to another review. So today we're going to be looking at the first part of the 1990 ABC two-part miniseries of It, based on the Stephen King novel of the same name. Now, what else can you say about this movie other than offer sheer praise to Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise, largely due to the fact he is just so bloody terrifying with them sharp teeth and everything else. And I remember as a kid, my mum was watching this on TV and I had to go to bed early. Not because I was being told to or anything like that. I wanted to go to bed early because I was absolutely cacking myself. And I think it was like at the beginning of the movie where he's sort of in the sewer and he's sort of talking to Georgie and like you sort of see the teeth come at the camera. And it was sort of like, no, I'm going to bed. I'm absolutely going to bed right now. So Tim Curry in this and as Darkness from Ridley Scott's Legend just scared the pants out of me. Two roles where Tim Curry is just sort of nightmares personified. I mean, I think he was in talks to, wasn't he in talks to play Judge Doom as well in Who Framed Roger Rabbit at one point? I mean, bearing in mind how terrifying Christopher Lloyd is in that movie as Judge Doom, God knows what Tim Curry would have been like. I mean, bearing in mind, if you would have had, okay, well, he played Pennywise, he played Darkness, and if you would have said, well, he plays Judge Doom as well, I think that would have been, I think as well, he wasn't cast. I think Robert Zemeckis didn't hire Tim Curry in Who Framed Roger Rabbit as Judge Doom, largely to the fact I think he was just too terrifying. Not because he was bad at the part, but I think I read somewhere that he was just too terrifying. But in this, Tim Curry, amazing performance as Pennywise, and I think it's been lauded as one of the greatest sort of horror sort of icon images, sort of, you know, especially like clowns, like horror clowns on film like of all time. You know, I think it's amazing really, like how much, I mean, bearing in mind this was 1990, it was a TV series and everything like that, and I will review part 2 as well, but I'll start with part 1 obviously, but it's amazing how much this film, well, this TV series does sort of hold up, not in every single way, but it does sort of hold up for the most part. And I think the miniseries had like twice the budget for a miniseries at the time. And I think even Alice Cooper was considered for the role of Pennywise at one point. God knows what that would have been like. I have no idea. Thing is, like with Tim Curry as well, I mean, he was largely known for sort of his comic roles at the time, like in movies like Clue and of course the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So here, like, because he's got such great character and expression in his face, and like in here he's got that deep, like, sort of, he puts on this like sort of Brooklyn-esque accent as Pennywise, and just with the makeup and the big head and everything else, like I say, it really is just the stuff of nightmares. So we also in this movie we have Jonathan Brandis, we have Seth Green, as well as John Ritter. Now before this, in regards to sort of adaptations of Stephen King's work to television, we had Salem's Lot, which I think done really well back in '79, but I think King himself was still not in favour of television as a medium to sort of convey horror. There were other shows happening at the time, sort of like there was Freddy's Nightmares and Friday the 13th, the series, which sort of had nothing to do with Friday the 13th whatsoever, but all these were sort of seriously hampered by sort of network restrictions. I think King was sceptical, to say the least, as they was going to cram like a sort of 1,000-page book into 4 hours. So you can understand why authors would feel that sometimes, like, you know, there's no way, there's no doubt, you know, like, because there has to be, if you're going to cram my story into that short space of time, they know that some of the story and what they've wrote is going to have to be sacrificed. And I think that's why a lot of the time people like, you know, like comic book writers like Alan Moore and things like that, they don't want it adapted. They're not in favour of it being adapted because they know the filmmakers and script writers, they're going to have to cut corners. They're not going to be able to film and shoot everything exactly as it's in the book. So they have to change things, they have to move things around, they have to take things out. And it's sort of like, I can understand why authors do get a bit annoyed with that, because it's like, that's not what I wrote, or you're missing out a part that's really meant, it has to be in the book. So other movies based on King's work like Pet Sematary and Stand By Me had done well, but TV series at the time was largely things like soaps and sitcoms. So this was, like I say, a bit of a gamble. And I think like shows, especially like Twin Peaks, were a prime catalyst in what made them believe sort of this could work. And it's interesting to note George A. Romero was originally sort of going to direct this before like sort of Tommy Lee Wallace took over. I think in many ways owes a great deal of camera work to sort of John Carpenter, as the film definitely sort of has a John Carpenter feel. It definitely has a John Carpenter vibes running through it. If you know of that John Carpenter style, sort of not later John Carpenter, but films like The Fog and things like that, there's definitely sort of that element of Carpenter-esque sort of traits here. I know there are many things that filmmakers had to be careful of with this movie. It was, like I say, it was made for TV, like how much blood they could show. It couldn't be too gory and things like that. And whilst, like I mentioned, not all of it works, I think it's largely remembered for its strengths. Much like Steven Spielberg's Duel, you have to remember this was made for television. And I think it's regarded to be one of the best sort of horror adaptations in that medium. So you have to, I think it, for all its, like I say, strengths and weaknesses, I don't think you can be too harsh on it, because it is a TV thing. It is a TV medium sort of film here. And, a big chunk of what makes it work and what makes it successful, and believe you me, not all of it works. But I think a huge chunk of it is owed to Tim Curry for his absolutely terrifying performance as Pennywise. So we first see Pennywise at this sort of washing line. I won't go too deep into the plot. I just sort of skim through it as quick as possible. Just point out different things here and there. So we sort of see Pennywise at this washing line in front of this girl, and these sort of killings keep happening. And this guy Mike is sort of investigating them. We catch up with Bill, sporting a very, very dated ponytail. Mike calls him and tells him it's back, right? So begins a flashback with Jonathan Brandis as the young Bill in Derry, and we all know the setup. If you've seen it, it's basically, like I say, you've seen it in the remakes or this one, you know exactly the setup, with his younger brother Georgie and his sailboat in the rain. But when you see Tim Curry as Pennywise in the sewer trying to lure him in, and we see them super sharp teeth, the bloodshot eyes, etc., it scared the hell out of me. And it's still, in a way, quite frightening now. And it's funny watching this again recently. How do I always somehow forget Seth Green is in this movie? It doesn't matter how many times I watch this. I'll watch it, I'll finish watching it or something, I'll walk away, and then somebody mentioned a few months later, do you remember when Seth Green was in it? And I'm like, oh yeah, of course he was. I always seem to forget that Seth Green was in this movie. So we got the adults of the loser clubs, and we got you know the deal, you know how. I won't bore you too much with that, but we can catch up with Ben, who is like this architect who gets a call from Mike, and see the losers. They've all tried to forget sort of what happened in Derry. Cue another flashback of him introducing himself to the class when he was younger, and he's ridiculed by this bully Henry Bowers. And you have to love how he has to stay for 1 hour after school, right? This bully, and he's like, to which he blames Ben, right? And he blames the guy, like, oh, he's got to stay an hour after school. It was you being the jerk, you idiot. You were the one sort of mouthing off, having a go at Ben, and then he's mad at this kid even more now because he's got to stay behind. I mean, this kid, Henry Bowers, he's not just a simple bully. Like, he's, a bit like Biff was in Back to the Future, where he's almost psychotic, right? He's a psychopath, okay? So, as I say, then Ben meets Beverly Marsh, and these two and Bill, Eddie and Richie start to bond. And I will say, for the most part, all the child actors put in a good performance. I'd say overall, it's good performances from the child actors. Grown-up Beverly is like a fashion designer who is with this guy who thinks it's okay to sort of use a belt on your woman. Anyway, she gets a call from Mike too. So back in the past, we see our losers club trying to build this dam. Grown-up Eddie now works as like a limo driver, and wasn't like Jim Carrey originally in talks for this role. And we get random moments throughout the movie, like to add to the scares, like photo album dripping blood, sinks exploding with blood. And I think the thing is with the TV, I think they were allowed to show blood, but it wasn't allowed to sort of come out of a body or an orifice, so they sort of had to do it sort of, like I say, like coming out of a photo album, sort of sinks and things like that. We see Pennywise crawling out of the shower room floor. Adult Richie now works as like a stand-up comedian, and he's in the same league as Johnny Carson and Leno, apparently, is mentioned. And they do tap without, like I say, I won't go in too deep with the plot with this movie because I'm sure many of you have seen it loads of times, but in this they do tap into that idea of what it was like bonding when you're younger, like the first time you're sort of attracted to a girl, as they do with Ben and Beverly, and asking each other questions like what you want to do when you grow up. And this is things like questions you sort of ask your friends if you've ever been in that environment when you were younger. You do ask things like that, like you're talking about life and you're discovering things and like that. So they do sort of tap into that, and you do get, like I say, for the most part the child actors all do a really good job. So Mike joins their crew and they all start comparing stories how they've all seen this scary clown, right? So it's a group of kids, they've all seen like this scary clown that's all just really gone on. So you have to love how Brandis says at one point it's some kind of monster, right? Like naming a sort of Metallica song or Metallica documentary over sort of a decade before it was made, but he's like, it's some kind of monster. And this bully Henry is like I say, he's a complete psycho. This isn't just your average bullying. No, he actually does want all the people of the Losers Club. He wants them dead, right? He actually wants them dead. So Bill shows him his photo album. Pennywise comes alive in a photo and threatens them all. Beverly starts using this like catapult on some empty bottles, and she is a natural. Right, and Richie has his mother's silver earrings, and Bill thinks it will kill it, and our losers basically go to confront it at sort of the old sewer entrance. As I say, really glancing over the plot here, but it's quite a long, let's say with this in the second part, it's quite a long plot here, so I don't want to go too in depth with it, so I'm just sort of glancing over it as much as possible. And it's amazing actually when you watch it again just how little screen time Tim Curry actually has. Now I watched it for the first time recently in quite a while, in a good few years, and it's amazing watching it again how you think of it, you think of Tim Curry, you think of Pennywise, you think of that clown makeup, you think how scary and intimidating he is, but it's amazing when you watch this part again how little screen time Tim Curry does actually have in the movie. Like overall he is not in the film a hell of a lot. And when they go to confront it, you have to love how Bill at one point is like, right, Bev, you go up front, you might be able to get a clear shot. And it's like, yeah, that's one way to make sure you don't have to go first, because like I wouldn't want to go down that sewage. It's like, Beverly, yeah, you go up front. I think that's a good idea. So Henry and his goons are there too, and one gets like sucked through a pipe. Henry gets like a Billy Idol haircut after looking into the deadlights. Read up on your Stephen King if you aren't sure what the deadlights are. So they use like battery acids and like a catapult on Pennywise. So after a scene that is over before it's began, Bill is like, swear we will all come back if it isn't dead, right? It's the ending. I mean, you have to take into account, bearing in mind budget, effects, things were limited at the time, and like I keep saying, this was a TV movie. And it's just amazing what you can do with a catapult, right? It's just amazing. There was another kid called Stan who was part of their crew, but the adult him has sort of committed suicide as he can't bear the thought of going back to Derry again. I'm like with the first, I mean, I will get to the second part obviously, but I just wanted to there's countless reviews for this online, but just wanted to put my opinion across. And like, yes, it's dated. No, it doesn't all work. But I think for the time and for a made-for-television movie, it really does. I mean, it has its moments, and I think like when you think of the latter, the It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 that were made most recently, I think they owe a lot to this version. I know they would many could argue the newer ones are a lot more faithful. They're sort of how it should be, but I still think even then, I think the newer films still owe a big amount of debt to the original movies, because I think without that, I think maybe they might have taken a few ideas from this. I think they definitely there was already sort of a template and a canvas there that they could already sort of work on and make better and improve upon. So they sort of had somebody already attempt it, and they could sort of see with this original what worked, what didn't work. So in a way, they sort of had their bets covered with the new films, because it's sort of like, okay, well, that worked in the original, but that didn't work, so we definitely won't do that. And so they were in a way sort of covered. But as I say, go and check out the original if you've never seen it. As I say, it's far from perfect, and like I say, just remember it is a TV movie. It is 1990. They were very limited with the amount of gore and blood and things they could show, but I think overall it holds up really well, and that is largely thanks, like I say, to great kid actors in the movie, but overall thanks to Tim Curry's amazing very, very intimidating performance as Pennywise. It just really makes the original It so memorable. So let me know what you think of the original It, just the part 1. How did you think it compared to the newer part 1? And let me know, did you prefer the old one? Do you prefer the new one? Let me know which one you prefer. And who was your favourite Pennywise as well, while we're on the subject? Who do you think is the best Pennywise? So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you again soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.